Today we're diving into Jobber, one of the most successful and popular platforms to manage your home service business. From scheduling and quoting to invoicing and payments, Jobber promises to be an all-in-one tool to run your business. But is it right for you? We're going to dig into the core features of Jobber, discuss pricing, see what users love and what they don't, and ultimately try to figure out if this is the right platform for building your business on. Hey, I'm Dan Lehman from Chromatic.com, and we build custom software for construction, trades, and home service businesses that's tailored around your specific needs. We're going to go ahead and dive into the Jobber platform and its core features, but this video is divided into sections. So if you're more interested in learning about pricing or other elements of the platform, go ahead and bounce around to the section that's most relevant to you. So the first thing that happens is that you've usually got someone coming to your website looking for a quote. In Jobber, we call that a request. We've got a couple different ways that request can occur. So for one, you can actually have your website built through Jobber. It's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of customization. So this is going to work really well if you are fine just spinning up your website and you don't have a lot to do with digital marketing. But if you already have your own website and you want to stand out from your local competition, that's fine too. You can use Jobber's integrated forms. So I'm going to enter my information in a form, and this form could be embedded on our website or it could be a standalone form. We've got room to capture all of the details about us, whether it's residential or it's for our business. We can include when might be a good time for an assessment to occur, and all of this information is then going to get pushed automatically into Jobber when we go ahead and submit this form. As soon as we submit the form, we get redirected to our client hub. This is essentially a client portal that's really easy to use. There's not a lot of setup for it, but any requests or quotes or appointments, all of that information with our up-to-date invoices is going to be available to us, and we're always going to get a link to go back there so we can see everything in one place. Now, internally, we're going to be able to see that request come through from the website. And so I can see that I've got a new request. I can get a notification about it. I can see all of the details that were entered by the person who filled in the information in the form. From here, if we warrant that an on-site assessment is needed, we can go ahead and easily add that. We could give it any instructions that we want, and we could schedule it right here, or we could add it to our queue to schedule later. So let's go ahead and do that and save it. When it comes to scheduling our jobs, Jobber has a really easy to use interface. We can see all of our different jobs. We could color code them different ways depending on the titles of the events themselves. We can see that we've got this request here that's unscheduled. So any kind of events, be it on-site assessments or the jobs themselves, are going to appear here when they're unscheduled, and we can easily drag this onto our calendar. Now, it doesn't really make sense that I do scheduling just from this month view. So I can easily change this here to look at a week, or maybe I want to do it for a day. So here we dragged it to the relevant day, but now we want to put it on the calendar for the correct time. We can do it based off of our own internal schedule. We can also do it based on the needs of the client and what they put in any of the notes. So if we click on this, we can easily get to the details of that job. If I need to, I can drag this out depending on how long that on-site is going to be. And when we're managing our calendar, we can look at this in different ways of all the different things that we want to be able to see at one point. Do we just want to look at tasks, or do we just want to look at visits? We can add any filters that we want. So if we don't want to see all of the different events, maybe we just want to see visits or just see tasks, we can do that at any point in time. We can also change this so it's not just by the time of day or week. We could take a look at this on a map instead, and that's going to be geocoded for us. Or we could look at a list if we want to see kind of an agenda view of everything that we have coming up. If I come into my backend settings, we can set up a calendar sync. Now, this is only a one-way sync. So if you're using Google Calendar, it can push this information so you have it in your Google Calendar, but you're not going to be able to have kind of two directions, bidirectionality. That's one of the things we commonly do as an automation project, is to create two-way sync between that. But by default, that's going to be a one-way sync of our calendar. Also, we can have our calendar colors like we were talking about before. So if we want to have some logic based on who this is assigned to, or if the title contains some certain text, then we can assign that color. And we've got a couple different options for route optimization. So if we just want to look at the locations geocoded on a map, I could manually click and drag between these if I want to make my own custom route, or we could optimize this. So if we click this optimize button, that's where it's going to determine based on our location and based on our starting point, what's the most efficient way to get through all of our jobs? So back to our flow, we did our on-site assessment, and now we want to take the details about that on-site and the request, and we want to convert that into a quote. Now, the really nice part about Jobber that a lot of people really appreciate is that you can easily convert these different documents or these different steps in the process. So you don't have to do dual entry all the time. You don't have to enter the client's name again. You don't have to enter all the information, all the line items time and time again. Instead, you can do it with a couple clicks of a button. So let's go ahead and click the More button, and now we can convert this to a quote. You see here we've got different templates to choose from, or you can build your own. Let's go ahead and choose one for a roof replacement. So here you can see this pulls in the details that we already had, so I don't have to manually key that in. As we were talking about before, we've got some additional details and we can add custom fields if we need to. If we scroll down, you can see that we've got this template. We can insert images and descriptions. We've got our line items. And so all of this can be templated out to really speed through the process of quoting this. Now, in the background, you can do some things like adding markup, but this really isn't the world's most sophisticated quoting or estimating tool. Many organizations continue to use their own takeoff estimating tools, and then they use this to build the quote and send it to their client. And while it's nice to add your own sections by inserting images and reviews, it's also not super sophisticated in the way it's presented to the client. That might be an area where you want to have a little bit more customization. When we're ready to save the quote, we can click the button to save the quote, or we've got some additional options where we can automatically send it as a text message to our client or send it as an email. In this case, let's go ahead and send an email. And you can see this is really easy. We've got an email template good to go. We don't have to always manually type that up ourselves. Now, we could add the PDF attachment itself, but remember, we're going to redirect them to that client hub. So most of the time, you don't necessarily even need that as a PDF. Let's go ahead and send that email. So now I, as the client, receive the quote in my inbox, and we can go ahead and view it in our client hub. Here we can see all of the details that we configured on the last screen, making it really easy to approve this, or this is a configuration setting. They could request changes as well. Let's go ahead and approve it. This is going to give us the option to type our name. We'll go ahead and draw this out for our signature, and we'll approve the quote. Back inside of Jobber, we get a notification. We see that this is approved. And as you'd expect, we can now convert this to a job. So again, we started with the request, we converted it to a quote, we converted it to a job. You can see how easy it is to be able to move through the system without having to enter in a lot of additional information. At this point, we have our job. We can see all of the details about the job. We can enter in some scheduling information and schedule this right now. Is this a one-off job? Is it a recurring job? We've got different settings there. We can enter in the time, or again, like we showed you before, we can push off scheduling to a later step if we don't want to schedule it immediately. And as you'd expect, when we're ready to save that job, we can email that booking confirmation or text it automatically. Now, of course, accessing all the information about the job needs to happen on mobile when we're actually on site. So on my phone, I can see my schedule, go ahead and open up the job. I can see all of the different details. Again, remember, all of those line items and everything associated with the job are automatically pulled in. I can see any other details here about the job. We can take notes, capture images. Now, this is an area that's not super robust in the platform. A lot of times you might be looking at a company cam or something else to manage some of the details of the job, but it's really easy to use this out of the box, even if it's not super sophisticated. You can tap into the maps on your phone by clicking on the directions, or signal to your client that you're on your way by shooting them a quick text. When you get on site, you can manage the status of the job. We can also do time tracking, where we manage this ourselves of when we're actually on site. And then we can also see all of the details of our time entry back inside of the Jobber web application. We can see how much time was recorded. Obviously, I was just doing some test data here. And we can see the GPS location of when we actually checked in. And if you want, there's a feature to automate the time tracking as well. When you actually get to the location, it's going to begin time tracking on your behalf. When you leave, you're done. When the job is done, we can either mark it and invoice it directly from our mobile app, or maybe we want to have a closeout process. And so we mark the job as done, but then later on is when we're going to actually come in and generate that invoice. And as you'd expect, that information follows all the way through the system so you can easily invoice, and the client's going to see that directly in their client hub. Next, let's talk about Jobber's pricing. So if we take a look at their website, I do want to talk a little bit about what can be confusing for some organizations as they start to use Jobber. Jobber is pricing both by the features, the plan that you're on, and then they're kind of baking in a way of pricing you by the number of users in your organization as well. So let me give you an example here. Let's say that you start off as a solo operator. And so maybe you're fine with the features of the core plan. So if we have this set to monthly, we can see this is $39 a month. And you're like, yeah, this is pretty good. Now you start to build up your business and you bring on someone for some help. You want to be able to schedule out for the two of you. So you have two users. Now, intuitively, you would think, hey, one user, that cost me $39 a month. So two users, that's going to be about $80 a month. Instead, what ends up happening is you are now a team. You are no longer an individual. So you are two users, which means you are up to 5 users. Notice you were on core before, but now here you are on Connect. There is no core plan. So you went from $39 for the month to suddenly you're on $169 for the month for the two of you, which means essentially you've quadrupled the amount that you're spending. Now, I'm not going to beat up Jobber about this. This is pretty common for software platforms, but it's good to go into this knowing the full picture of what it might actually cost you if you start as a solo operator and then you expand over time. So let's take a look at some of the features that impact your pricing. So all your core CRM kind of functionalities included on all the plans. Awesome. What you're going to find is for Jobber, anything that involves automation of any kind is going to bump you up to a different pricing plan. So for example, automated client notifications, here we're just talking about you want to send them automated messages. Well, that's going to already take you from core to connect. That's pretty table stakes. And if you want to go from automated one-way text messages to now you have two-way text messaging, well, that's going to bump you up a plan again to their Grow plan. Custom automations cost more, and there's some beta features here like their AI receptionist, which we'll talk about in a minute, that's going to push you up to their most expensive plan. Now, the website that I showed you is included on all plans, but they have a marketing suite, which you can either add to any plan that you're on, or it's included in the Plus plan. So Plus, their most expensive plan, if we go up to the top, which is that $5.99 a month, if we're looking at it monthly, is going to give you additional functionality both in the beta AI receptionist and in marketing, which includes it all. So while it's starting to get a little bit more expensive, is now more kind of all-inclusive as opposed to some of this a la carte. Their marketing suite essentially consists of 3 main components. You have your reviews. This is essentially the process of automating prompting of your customers to give you Google reviews. You've got some email marketing with campaigns. This is something you previously had to do with an external provider like MailChimp. Now, this isn't necessarily as robust as a full digital marketing platform, but it's a really good start. So for example, you're not going to get things like text campaigns, but that might be something that they include in the future. And then we also have referrals. So how do you take your existing base of clients who are really happy and excited and get them to bring in new business? Down here for quoting, you can quote on every plan, which is kind of a no-brainer, but this is one of the parts that bugs me a little bit, is advanced customization. If you want to add images, reviews, and other content to your quotes, that's going to bump you up from core to grow. And so that's a part that I'm like, I don't know. I don't love stage gating that particular feature because that seems pretty table stakes for quoting software. Invoicing and payments, pretty standard across the board. Of course, when it comes to any of that automation, that's going to bump you up a plan. When it comes to reports, you can see that there are a number of them available. And inside of Jobber, it's really easy to be able to run any one of those reports. But if you're looking for something a little bit more sophisticated where you can create your own custom reports, which is common with a lot of other software, Jobber is really not the place for that. The last part about pricing here that I'm going to kind of segue into integrations is around integrations themselves. So if you're not familiar with what integrations are, it's essentially allowing your different systems, your different software to be able to talk to one another. So if you have your own takeoff or estimating software, because that's not really a huge strength of Jobber's, and then you have Jobber for quotes, if you want them to talk to one another, well, that's where you need an integration. If you don't have an integration, that's where you find yourself doing dual entry. That means you enter information in one system, and then you have to take all that information and enter it all over again in another system. That's how we create data silos, and that's where a lot of businesses really fall apart. So Zapier is a tool that allows those different pieces of software to talk to one another. And you can see that's not included in Core. You have to use Connect for that. In addition, their API, which I'll talk more about in a moment, is only available on their Plus, their most expensive plan, not on any of the others. So in Jobber, we can take a look at many of the integrations that they offer. The nice part is that for payments, they offer their own payment solutions. So you don't have to use or set up something else. You can do payments directly through Jobber. Now, another common integration is going to be for QuickBooks, because let's be honest, it feels like 90% of small businesses use QuickBooks. And you can see that Jobber has a growing library of all of the different integrations that they support within their system. Now, some people feel like Jobber relies too much on external integrations. My take on it is that no software, including Jobber, is truly an all-in-one software, meaning you'll never use any other software with your business. As you mature as an organization, you're going to find that there's simply tools that do the job better. I have two main problems with Jobber's integration ecosystem. Number one is that while it connects to Zapier for integrations, it doesn't connect to other common platforms like Make.com and others that give you a little bit more power. Number two is that Zapier's own integration doesn't give you the same power as Jobber's API, because Jobber's API contains way more endpoints that you can tap into, meaning there's a lot more possibilities that you can automate. Now, if you want to learn more about what APIs are and how we can automate and integrate different applications within your business, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But the reason that all of this Zapier and API talk is so important is because Jobber's own automations are honestly pretty limited. If you come into their automations and add a new automation, the only triggers that we have are based on dates. If you use any kind of other automation platform, you have way more options of what to trigger your automation on. So let's say we want to do X number of days after a quote is sent. Then the only options of actions that we have are to send a notification, which, I mean, that's helpful. We can do that. We can add our own tag, or we can update a status. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to automation, which is why so many businesses rely on these external tools to integrate and to automate, to get these systems talking to one another. And when it comes to extending Jobber to make it work for the needs of your business, again, some of the functionality is a little limited. For example, we can add custom fields, but we can only add 5 different data types. Meaning if you wanted to capture a date that's not already part of Jobber, you really can't do it. And if you want to go a step further and turn this into more of a project management software or inventory management software and add those components to Jobber, you can't really do it within the Jobber application itself. I'll get off my soapbox a little bit here. It's just an area I'm really passionate about because we spend so much time focusing on automating business processes, and our hands are a little bit tied when it comes to the platform. So let's do a recap of who is Jobber a good fit for. If you're just getting started with your business as a solo operator, it doesn't get any easier than Jobber. It's off-the-shelf software. You don't have to pay for a consultant to set it up. It's just easy to use. And that ease of use means your team is going to adopt it really quickly. Oftentimes, if you bring in a big complex platform that has all the bells and whistles, your team might not use it. And if they're not using it, it defeats the entire purpose. If your digital marketing needs are relatively light, you'll also find that it's really easy to use their marketing suite. And if you find some gaps in its functionality and you're fine to use another piece of software alongside of Jobber, then it's a pretty good fit. Jobber's all-in-one mentality, coupled with its ease of use, means it's a great fit for a ton of small businesses. Now, Jobber might not be a fit for you if you find that as an organization, you're maturing and your business processes aren't necessarily fitting into how Jobber works out of the box. Given some of their limited customization and integration capabilities, you might find that all the duct tape that you're using isn't holding up as your business expands. If that's where you're currently at with your business and you want to better understand how custom software can be suited around the needs of your business rather than trying to piecemeal everything together, don't hesitate to reach out to our website at chromatic.com, where we're offering free 30-minute consultations.